Hi everyone, it's Jocelyn here. This blog post is all about what an effective explicit phonics lesson looks like. It can be really hard to know, and there's lots of programs out there, and what I'm offering you is not a program, but I am offering you one suggestion for what a phonics lesson could look like. I've recently released a resource, which is a phonics presentation in PowerPoint all about the phoneme A. So I want to take you through it and show you how to use it. And I really, really hope that it becomes a valuable part of your teaching that helps you to save time and teach well and know that your students are getting the maximum benefit from what you're doing in your classroom. When you open up the presentation, you'll see this little pop-up box and it says that there's a password. You won't have the password. What you're going to do is click on read only. So in the past, some of the things I've made have been fully editable. This is not one of those. So you can see here it's phonics for reading and spelling. I'm not writing a program. This is just a resource and I needed a title, so that worked there. And you can see that it says part 3. So part 1 would be the initial code of what we might call single sounds or the alphabet sounds. And part 2 is the common consonant digraphs. So ch, sh. This PowerPoint is designed for, I guess, one of the first lessons that children will experience in the complex code. And I want to take you through it. So let's have a look. So when you start it up, it'll give you that first slide there. I haven't made this particularly for Halloween. I just thought it was a lovely picture, and then my daughter pointed out it had pumpkins, but I think we're all okay with that. So as we go through, we can see that the first slide here, the second slide, is about the learning intentions and success criteria. I've included the words graphemes and phonemes because I don't think that children need to be scared by those words, and I don't think you need to be scared by them either. For the vast majority of us, these are not words we were ever taught at university or college, and they can be a little daunting, but please don't be scared. Phoneme is simply the sound that we say when we speak, and graphemes are the letters we use to represent them. So today we are going to be learning the grapheme A. So it's the AY. It's 2 letters, but it's 1 grapheme. I'll just go back a little bit. Here we are with our success criteria. I've put this into a little bit more child-friendly language, and I notice here that I've typed sounds. You can say sounds, or you can say phonemes or graphemes, depending on how you're using the words. It's completely up to you whether you use the grapheme and phoneme terminology, or you just say sounds and letters. It will depend on what your school's approach is, what you're personally comfortable with. It's a less important point than the fact that children are learning this stuff. So don't get too caught up on the language. It's more about the process of learning. So we want children to recognize that the AY is the representation of that phoneme A really, really quickly. We're working for automaticity. The next skill is they need to be able to use that grapheme to blend words. Then they need to be able to segment a word, identify where the A is, and write the AY. So when I say where the A is, where that phoneme A falls, and then be able to write the letters AY to represent it. When we teach both of these things as reciprocal processes, the learning is so much stronger. And it also means that you don't have to have a separate standalone spelling program, which is automatically going to save you time and angst, because what do you base your spelling program on? Often it's those high frequency words. That's a topic for a whole nother time. But by focusing your spelling activities in the sound you're learning for reading, we're really giving kids the opportunity to see this stuff in multiple contexts, and it's so much stronger for them. So we're looking here, this set of PowerPoints focuses on A, E, I, O, U, or U in this case. Now, there's lots of ways to write these sounds. We're only going to teach one. Some programs will teach 4 or 5 representations of A, one after the other. I can see the benefit of that, but I can also see that for our poppets who struggle, that learning all of that at once can really complicate things for them. So we're working to give children one way to write all 44 phonemes of English, so that even if it's not the right spelling, they can communicate their ideas in writing. And again, that's a topic for a whole nother day. But let's crack on here. Okay, let's have a look. Oh, in Australia, crack on means let's get started. Sorry about that. So we are learning to read the grapheme A. We want children to, with one voice, answer A when they see this, and they're going to be given a number of opportunities. So we want students to say A, 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 and there we go. To make this a multisensory exercise, we've already given them something to look at and something to say. Now we want to give them something to do. I would recommend having children write this grapheme 10 times. Personally, I choose a book. There's some really interesting research around the difference between using a mini whiteboard or a book. So I go a book every time from the earliest years. But if you have children whose handwriting is not well developed, or they have a delay of some sort, don't give them books with lines. Just blank paper is fine. But by the time they get to this point, they probably should be writing on lines. This is not a handwriting lesson, so avoid the dotted thirds. Just a regular exercise book that would be suitable for the age group you're working with, just with the regular lines on it, no dotted thirds is my recommendation. So while they write this grapheme, they're going to say A, 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 A. A really fun thing to do, but it's also highly effective, is to have children also write this grapheme in the air with their eyes closed, so that they're working to build the muscle memory of the A, and it's particularly effective for children with memory issues. So they might trace, although I wouldn't recommend tracing for everybody, but if you have a child who has really significant memory delays, this is an opportunity for differentiation. So perhaps they trace one of yours, then they write their own, and then they close their eyes and actually write it either in the air or on the paper with their eyes shut. It won't be neat, but it will help them to internalize that formation and the grapheme. And I'm getting away from myself. I do apologize. So moving on. This next slide is your opportunity to check in and see whether children have become familiar enough with that grapheme to be able to use it to read and spell. So TTYP stands for talk to your partner, and you want the children to have the opportunity to talk with the person next to them and tell them what they're learning. You might have to model this sentence structure a little bit until they get the idea, but the phoneme we are learning is A. You want the children to be saying that to their partner. They're learning to use a full sentence. They're learning to articulate what it is that they're learning, and it's a good way to provide variety within the lesson, that it's not all just sitting and listening, that they do have a chance to interact with others. Look, I'll grant you, it's not a rich interaction, but it can help to focus them and just give them that little bit of a difference that helps them to stay on track. So they're going to talk to their partner and say the phoneme we are learning is A. Then you're going to ask them, which of these is A? When you click, two graphemes will appear. One of them is sh, one of them is A. You want the children to indicate without speaking and really kind of without pointing, with their arm outstretched, because if they do that, it's really easy for others to copy. So you need to be able to check in that all of the children have internalized what this A looks like. So have them hold their two hands close to their chest and then simply indicate with the flick of a thumb, either left or right, which of these is A. So when you click, there's our two graphemes. You want them clicking to indicate that the one on the right is A. If 80% or more do this correctly, you're ready to move on. But if you didn't get that 80% in the check-in, then I've put a hyperlink which will take you back to practicing reading the A, and we go through that again. A, 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 A. You might want to skip the writing again because that could get a little tedious for them. And then we come back and we have another check-in. Hopefully, if you have had to repeat that by this stage, they are able to point correctly to the A with their thumb. If they're not, have a look at how focused they are in the lesson, how much background noise there is, how much distraction there is. Are all of the children focused? Are they all silent and following along and speaking when they need to be? So if you do find that kids are having a challenge around that, pop me an email or put a little question in Facebook. I'll be happy to help you out. Moving along from here, we want children to recognize the A then in amongst a number of graphemes that they've already learned. So they're going to say sh, A, th, ch, A, e, I, A, o, A. And I've put the short vowels in there because remembering that this A is the first part of the complex code they're learning, and particularly if you have children who have speech challenges or they come from a language background other than English, which I know is in many of our schools, practicing the short vowels is really valuable. So moving along to the next skill, we are learning to read with the grapheme A. So what we want the children to do here is to sound this word out and then say what the word is, but with one voice. If children are yelling out with popcorn all over the place, so you show this and some of them are going say, and other children are yelling say, there is very little learning happening there, particularly for your children who are easily distracted or who might need some extra attention in their learning. So you need a bit of a signal. You can use a click of the fingers, you can use a phrase, it could be get ready to read or let's read now or something, whatever works for you. I'm a bit of a finger clicker because it gives children something to look at so they can see my fingers move, but then they can also hear the sound. So we don't want them at this point just yelling out say. We want them to actually sound the word out. So it would look like this. Say. But you are not modeling that process for them. By the time they get to this point in their learning, they should be able to blend words confidently on their own. If they can't, this is not the right learning for them. They need to go back and work on those processes until they can do it confidently. Then they can begin with this work. So a click of the fingers or your phrase, say, and then you can give them immediate feedback because I've put pictures in there that illustrate the point of the word that we've just read. So there we go. There's a picture of a girl and she's speaking. So as we go through, it's the same process. Day, picture, there it is. You need it to be that fast. So if it's a lengthy process where it takes people a long time to think of the sounds, again, this is not the right level of learning for those students. They need to go back, and this is where some careful grouping really comes to the fore. Lay, and there's our chicken, and away we go. So we work through all of those words. And then we come to the next skill, which is segmenting the words, identifying the phonemes, so the sounds of the word, and writing the appropriate grapheme. All of the words here will have A in them, and I've switched the picture word order so that we start with the picture. Now this is a tray and you may find that you need to unpack a little bit of vocabulary, but don't spend a whole lot of time. This is not a vocab lesson. You are not going to digress into, let's create our own visual representations of what a tray is and I'll show you a YouTube clip. You're simply going to say this is a piece of wood or metal or plastic that we use to carry things and leave it at that. You may, though, need to do a little bit of backwards and forwards, my turn, your turn, about how to pronounce the word, because if a child has a speech challenge or they're from a language background other than English, their pronunciation may not quite be correct, which can mean that it will really impact on the spelling. So you might say tray, 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 tray. Okay. So once you are certain that they know how to pronounce the word, you can then have them sound out the word. Now, how they do this is up to you. I'm particularly partial to fingers because, they're there all the time. You may choose to use blocks and have children point. You may have them write lines to map out the sounds in the word or the phonemes. That's completely up to you. You can try a number of different methods or just run with what you've already used. Don't go changing everything on children if they already have some skill in this area. Just roll with what you know. So you're going to say your word is tray, sound it out now, and you might click your fingers or whatever you're doing, and they will say a. You're not modeling that for them, because copying is not learning. And if you model it and they copy you, they're not actually doing the processing themselves. If they run into trouble and a number of children in the group have errors, then you might go back and model it for them and then have them repeat after you. But always give them the opportunity to do it first. So tray, sound it out now. The students say a, then they go ahead and write it down. There can be a little bit of wait time because children's processing speed can be different, and potentially if the handwriting formation is not strong, then that's really challenging. But we've had a student with a vision impairment and a braille machine participate in these lessons this way. So everybody can participate. If you had a child with dysgraphia or they have really, really significant handwriting difficulties, provide them with magnetic letters, because it is about the mapping of sounds, not the handwriting. Obviously, for children with no challenges, we want them to be able to just write it, but support other students in the way they need it. Those magnetic letters don't have to be anything special. Do make sure, though, that they are lowercase and that they somewhat match the handwriting style that you're teaching. But as quick feedback, once they've all finished writing their word, you click and along comes your word, and they get to check it. You might choose to have a partner check it or just themselves and they give it a little tick. Completely up to you how you manage that. So if we look at the next word, hey, sound out your word now. Hey, hey, they write it down. I am a big believer in pencils down, arms folded. So when the children have finished writing, that they're signaling to you that they're finished and ready to move on by placing their pencil on the desk. And I'm even so picky that I say that it needs to be parallel to the book, and then they fold their arms and their eyes are looking at you. It's a good way to prevent children from going off on tangents and having a little chat or drawing pictures in their books, which, can be really distracting to other children around them. So they're signaling to you that they've finished, and then we go, hey, and you work through the other pictures. This is stay. The trainer is instructing the dog to stay. And then we're going to practice. So one of the really key things that's been built into this sequence is rehearsing and revising previously learned material. So we will have a few words on let's read. None of these words will contain the A. They will only contain sounds that the children have already learned. So you'll use your click or your phrase. So let's get ready to read now. And then the children say flash, flash. If they've already learned these, then you might not ask them actually to sound it all out loud, depending on their development. You might ask them to sound it out in their head, and then you give a little click, and then that's their signal to tell you what the word is. That really depends on your children's level of development in their reading, and my Facebook page and my email is always available for you to ask me questions if you're a little unsure about what to use when. So we have some words that have only sounds the children have learned. There are no irregular high frequency words in this because those are taught separately in my classrooms. So we've had some reading practice and some spelling. So here we have shop. You probably don't want the children to all have to work together for this one because we want a gradual release of responsibility. So they can just use their own methods and sound it out, but do insist that they do it, but that they're doing it independently. So when we were sounding out words with A, that was our heavily teacher-guided work. Now we know that they know the sounds in these words because we've taught them, and they can use their own fingers or their own blocks or their own dashes, however you do it, to write the words themselves. So there's not as many drip, belt, chips. Apologies for my North American friends out there. I didn't consider that your students would call these fries, but you can explain that in other places these are called chips. And mops. There we go. So the next part of the lesson that I've put in here is some phonological and phonemic awareness work. If you've done my teach along, my phonological and phonemic awareness teach along earlier this year, you'll be familiar with this format, but basically you don't show this to the children. You may print this or put it on a screen where you just look at it, and away you go, completing those activities. The last part of the lesson here is a recap. Now, there's a really fantastic website called The Learning Scientists, and these ladies have come up with a way to communicate to us non-scientists, mere mortal teachers, about some methodology we can use to help children build their memory. And one of them is spaced practice. So I very deliberately placed the A work at the start. Then we've had a bit of a recap and a look at some other skills. Now we're going to come back to a recap of today's learning, which is our A, 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 and then we get into some words. So then your signal, a tray, and there's our immediate feedback, and you can see that they're not the same words that children read before, they're the ones that they were spelling. So we're looking at these words in a slightly different way, and then we have a little bit of a check-in at the end about what is it we've done today, so we can communicate to the children what they've actually done in their lesson with you. We've got some thumbs up, and you can read through those list of statements with children. You might have them talk to their partner again. Talk to your partner about what you did in today's lesson. Talk to your partner about what you've learned. And those two things can be the same or they can be different. So what did I do? I wrote some words. What did I learn? I learned about how to write A. Finally, there is a link here to an absolutely free resource. Now, you don't have to provide a login or an email address to access this resource. It'll just take you straight to the PDF of the pictures and the words we just saw in that PowerPoint for you to download, perhaps laminate, and they can be used as follow-up work. So if you're running two groups, because let's face it, we are extremely unlikely to find a classroom where everybody's at the same level, you might be lucky enough to have an adult working with you, whether that's a parent volunteer or an assistant, and you teach your explicit lesson, and then the adult can use these resources to support the children to practice. You can use these as a send home task or however else you choose to use them. But that's there for you, completely available just to download a PDF and use as you like. So I really hope that today's video has helped you to understand a bit more about how to use the PowerPoint to deliver some really effective teaching. Once children know the routine and what they need to do, you can get this process down to about 25 minutes to half an hour, including that phonological and phonemic work. So if you leave that out, you're looking at about 20 minutes, but daily phonological and phonemic work phonemic work has enormous benefits to children in their reading and spelling. So I would recommend you leave it in. At first, it may take you 40 minutes because you're learning the routine, the kids are learning the routine. But I want to stress this is not a program. It's just a resource that if you are a time-poor teacher who has some knowledge of what explicit, systematic, synthetic phonics looks like, but maybe you haven't had an opportunity for any professional learning, or maybe there isn't a program set in your school and everyone's doing different things in their classrooms, this resource I hope can really help you out. And I will be producing the other PowerPoints for the other graphemes as well. I wish you all the best for a lovely Christmas, and please do get in touch and let me know if there's anything else I can help with. That's all from me for today, and I look forward to hearing from you soon. Bye-bye.